What if Jon Snow stayed with the Wildlings? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. 2,000 likes gets a part 2.
Do it. Do it.
Told you. He's still one of them. Go on!
Jon ignores the jeers from the Wildlings, and instead turns his head towards the old man who mutters a prayer to the old gods, and then the blade flashes. He drops to the ground without a sound. Ygritte smiles, and the others nod in approval as they finish looting. This at least gives him a chance to gather his thoughts. Longclaw slips from his hands onto the ground as he looks down at the bloody soil. His duty was to guard the realms of men, and yet here he was killing the very people he was sworn to protect. He recalls the words of Qhorin Halfhand, how he was there to discover the Wildlings' intentions, and that he did. To avoid the White Walkers and to cross the wall. And who can blame them? Jon thinks of his encounters with the White Walkers in Castle Black and shudders. 2 of those things killed 7 men and burned his fingers. If it wasn't for Ghost, he wouldn't be around. More importantly, his time with the Free Folk showed him just how big of a threat they are. Soon enough, they are only a short way off from Castle Black. Even better is that in fighting the Bridge of Skulls, he has deprived the castle of most of its fighting men. The Magnar of Thenns, Stur begins to lay out his plans for the assault, preparing for an all-out assault until Jon shakes his head.
You've got a better plan, Crow?
Let him speak. He's one of us now.
I do. Let me ride on ahead and speak to the garrison. Let me convince them to surrender and open the gates for the army. Our orders were to take Castle Black, and that is what I'll do, Crow. We were told to take it and open its gates for Mance. He didn't say how we do it. We can do this without bloodshed, and you can preserve your men's strength. Ours or yours? We've got the victory in our grasp. That castle is guarded by green boys, greybeards, and cripples. Barely 100 of them, if I were to guess. What do we have to fear from them? Aye, the fighting men are away. And you know who's left? The smiths, builders, stewards, and stable boys. How many of those does Mance have in his army? You're gonna need them, and many more. Enough of your excuses, boy. We've been here on this side of the wall before. Once we get through Castle Black, it's nothing but miles and miles of open land rich for the taking. And beyond that are the men of the north. Aye, you might pick the land clean for a time, but once they come riding there is no chance, and everything you've done to get south will be for nothing. Tell me, Magnar, the Thenns are the strongest of the Wildlings because of their bronze. But how would that fare against the old steel and heavy horse of the north? Now, you need men who can smith you steel of your own and build your villages.
A silence descends on the camp as the Wildlings all look at one another. They heft their weapons, boiling with anger. One command is all it will take for them to cut Jon down. Even Ygritte seems uncertain. But suddenly, Styr orders them to get Jon a horse and to ride ahead to parley. Soon enough, Jon is galloping, but not so far that a skilled archer couldn't put an arrow in his back if they wanted. More importantly, they keep Ghost with them as insurance. As he approaches Castle Black, he notices the Night's Watchmen milling around the towers. There are much fewer than when he left, making him more determined to end things here. Soon enough, they begin to spot him, and a few wave him over. The Wildlings stop just out of arrow range and watch him disappear into one of the towers. To Jon's surprise, he sees some of his friends, Gren, Pip, and others who survived the Great Ranging. But their good cheer quickly disappears as they catch a glimpse of the Wildling force gathered. As Jon is taken inside, he's greeted by Donald Noy and Maester Aemon in the mess hall, where he explains everything that's happened. He says that Qhorin Halfhand told him to infiltrate the Free Folk and learn their plan.
So you're alive and you come back on the wrong side of the wall. What are we to make of this? Many would see this as treason. Even your story won't put the men at ease. Much less what you're suggesting. Better than the alternative of fighting. I've seen their host. You have 40 men. They have 40,000.
I understand you've spent time with the Free Folk, but I hope you have not forgotten your oath. We are to guard the realms of men.
Aye, the realms of men. Aren't those men in that army? Men, women, and children? They're running from the White Walkers. You saw what they can do. If we leave them there, they'll be raised as whites. If we fight, all we'll do is waste our strength against the real enemy. I'm not suggesting we yield, but I am saying we try to get terms.
I'll deal with them when the time comes.
The pair look at each other and nod, starting to hammer out terms. Though they are outnumbered, they still hold Castle Black and the other forts. With this little bargaining power, they offer terms to steer. Small groups from the Magnar's party will be allowed into the castle under the flag of truce, so long as they harm no one in the Night's Watch or the surrounding countryside. Meanwhile, word is spread to the nearby towns to evacuate. By the time Mance's army arrives, they have a proposal. They will begin to let the free folk through, but under the Night Watch's terms. Only in small groups, with the first few batches made predominantly of non-combatants. These will act as hostages for good behavior. Once they are through, the Wildlings are free to settle in the Gift, while the Night's Watch will help them settle so long as they hand over their weapons and cease raiding. These are bold terms, but the Night's Watch is emboldened by word that the fighting in the Bridge of Skulls works in their favor, and the garrison is returning soon. The opportunity is lost just as they had hoped, meaning the free folk will need to storm the wall if they hope to cross. Reluctantly, Mance agrees, and the first groups of free folk arrive, mostly women and children, but with a smattering of warriors to reinforce Styr's raiding party. The hostages are soon scattered across the remaining castles of the Night's Watch, or escorted to the Gift. It is a tense situation where just one misstep could lead to a bloodbath, but John keeps a cool head throughout. He works closely with Donal Noy and Mance to make sure that things go smoothly. John serves not just as a mediator, but as a justice bringer. Whenever there is an infraction, no matter how small, it is John who deals with it. It only gets worse when the likes of Bowen Marsh and Alistair Thorne return. They are both furious at this deal and see John's actions as a betrayal. Many call for his death, though Maester Aemon's protection saves him. That and the knowledge that it might bring wildlings down on them. Soon enough, the numbers grow and outnumber the Night's Watch, but the Black Brothers have their concerns, electing a new Lord Commander to deal with the free folk. A dozen names are cast and withdrawn, leaving a few frontrunners. Janos Slint is one, along with Bowen Marsh. Both of them promise to deal hard with the free folk and not let any more of them through or force them to accept harsher terms, such as forcing them to disarm. But John is more moderate and says he will do everything to ensure peace, but this does little to win over the Black Brothers, and he feels his support dwindling with these promises. Although he remains one of the frontrunners, Janos Slint also takes the lead and may eventually get the victory if John loses any further support. John knows Janos Slint has the edge, his rhetoric of strength and distrust of the free folk appealing to many of the wary Night's Watch brothers. But John has an ally, Donal Noy, who meets John in the forge.
You're losing them, John. They don't trust your ties with the Wildlings. You need to remind them that you're one of them, first and foremost.
I thought they'd see the bigger threat. The White Walkers will come, Donal. They need to understand that.
They will in time, assuming you win. But right now, that threat is far away, and the free folk present a far more pressing matter. You need to win them over with that first. Get to their hearts first, and then you can reach their heads.
What do you mean?
Janos is playing to their fear, but he's not perfect. That ego of his is getting in the way. The old bear was a lordling, but he drank with his men, listened to their stories and understood them. This Lord Janos has been a lord for a few months and acts like he's the king. But you've been here a year. Remind them of that. Let them recall that you've dealt with Sir Alistair, ate the same shit food, and sat up on the wall, freezing your arse off.
The plan makes sense. That evening, John changes his approach. In the mess hall, as the brothers of the Night's Watch gather, John stands up, his voice calm but firm. Rather than talk about the White Walkers or why they must rescue the free folk, he instead spends his time drinking with the men. Many share the same problems as before, with a lack of manpower, poor food, and being overworked. But John suggests that many of these might be solved. He says that with all their extra hands, they won't have to worry about hauling lumber, doing construction work, or manning the wall alone. The reaction is immediate, as many of the men chuckle. John takes this as encouragement. He jokingly says that now some men can sleep past noon or visit Molestown whenever they wish. While these are meant in jest, it does make them more inclined to listen when he talks about manning all the castles, creating a new generation of warriors, and reducing the need to go on rangings. When he begins to talk about more serious issues like defending against the White Walkers, he finds them more eager to listen. Meanwhile, Donald subtly fans the flames of discord between Janos Slynt and his supporters. He makes sure to bring up Slynt's pompous claim of noble superiority, something that his commoner supporters begin to take note of. When Maester Aemon announces the results, Jon's name edges out the others. The Brothers of the Night's Watch have chosen him as their Lord Commander. Donald claps him on the back and congratulates him, but he warns that the real work has just begun. Though the peace is holding for now, Jon must give something tangible and orders that 100 boys of prominent chiefs be sent to the Night's Watch. He says that these will be taught practical skills, but also has them serve as hostages. Next, he has Donal Noy and some of the stewards helping with the Wildlings settle by helping rebuild the ruins and reaching them about agriculture. He reasons that keeping them busy will make them less likely to raid and cause trouble. Lastly, he also works with Mance to keep the free folk in line. He knows the king cannot always watch them, so instead he begins recruiting some wildlings they trust to keep an eye on things and punish rule breakers. This consists of Tormund, Ygritte, and a few others. But while things stabilize for the wildlings in the Night's Watch, there remains problems with the North as a whole. He tries to appeal to the Northern Lords, but receives a chill reception from most. Word soon gets out regarding the Red Wedding and the destruction of House Stark. This leaves Roose Bolton in command of the North as its new warden. They begin making their way north from the Twins with thousands of Freys. Although they claim this is to deal with the Ironborn, Jon knows that his precarious position leaves him vulnerable, since many Northern Lords might not accept the Free Folk and the Boltons may wipe them out as a way to gain legitimacy. Jon knows he must act quickly to endear the Northmen to the Wildlings, lest they unite against him. The best course of action is to attack some of the Ironborn holdings. Yet when he suggests this to Mance, the king beyond the wall seems amused, staring at the fire with a wry smile.
You want the free folk to fight for the Northmen who've hunted us for generations. Not for them, for survival. Yours and theirs. The Ironborn hold our lands, and the Boltons will use any excuse to destroy us. By destroying the Ironborn, you will prove your worth. The North will see the free folk as more than just raiders. If the Boltons show up, it won't matter how many free folk stand against them. They'll crush us unless the northern houses stand with us. It'll be a hard sell, Snow. But you've convinced me of other things.
Mance gathers all the most trustworthy chieftains. Men like Tormund, the Magnar, and a few other chieftains are selected. This force is small, but large enough to strike hard, especially against the outnumbered Ironborn. Jon helps them by sending out letters to some of the nearby houses, urging them not to panic or attack the free folk. The mountain clans are skeptical of this, but allow them to pass so long as they do not approach their lands. The sight of wildlings makes for a nightmare for the small folk. They see the raiders, the same raiders who have killed their men, kidnapped their women, and burned their homes marching proudly through the roads. By this time there is an army of them, rank after rank of them, with each tribe stranger than the last. Many retreat into their homes, refusing to show themselves and peeking out from their windows, fully expecting chaos to unfold. And yet, the destruction does not happen. While there are fights here and there, Mance, Ygritte, and Tormund help keep the free folk in check. Their first strike is in Deepwood Motte, deep in the Wolfswood. Here the free folk have a tremendous advantage. As masters in forest combat, they know how to avoid patrols and ambush any Ironborn foolish enough to venture out of the gates. Soon enough, they reach up to the walls and come out swarming. Thousands at once against the outnumbered Ironborn garrison, who are unused to this environment. This leaves them hard-pressed to hold them back. However, their steel weapons and armor mitigate this advantage, and for every Ironborn who falls, they take several wildlings with them. Several assaults are beaten back, and it seems like the garrison will hold. But then Ygritte scales the walls, her arrows clearing her section of sentries, and blows a horn. Suddenly, One, the giant, comes rushing out of the forest, his size making it easy to mistake him for a tree as he smashes through the gate. Within minutes, they rush in and turn the tide against the Ironborn, who are slaughtered to a man. Meanwhile, the Northmen are treated well, free from prison, and their homes restored and untouched. Mance speaks to Lady Glover, promising that he does not wish to fight, simply to live with them peacefully. While confused, she thanks them for their help and offers guides to lead them to Stony Shore. This proves to be a more difficult challenge, as it is farther south than the Wildlings dare venture, and close to the shore where the Ironborn have their ships. But the guides provided by the Glovers prove useful. Not only do they escort the Wildling army out of the Wolfswood, but they spread stories of the Free Folk. Rather than the horror stories expected, these men paint the Wildlings as unlikely allies, the saviors of House Glover from the Ironborn. Slowly, and perhaps driven by desperation, some small folk even trade with Mance. While they are not welcome in their villages, they do send food in exchange for furs and weapons. A few desperate small folk even join them, having been driven from their homes by the Ironborn. Despite that, the fighting at Qhorin Square is harsh, and many warriors fall trying to scale the walls. This time, it is Tormund and Stur who win the day. While Ygritte and One take a detachment to distract the defenders, the experienced raiders take their best climbers, braving the Ironborn arrows and storming the battlements. Tormund himself slays Dagmar Cleftjaw in this fight, breaking the Ironborn morale. Mance leaves a gap in their lines that seems to lead to the sea, but as the Ironborn garrison desperately rushes through, a squadron of chariots comes riding harder and runs them down. The nobles of House Tallheart are freed and restored to their position, but rather than dally there, Mance simply leaves, his army melting back into the forest and leaving the small folk muttering about these strange people. But as they retreat to the gift, the seeds of these victories are planted. Not only do they refrain from sacking, but they manage to restore the Glovers and Tallhearts to their rightful place, making them seem less like conquerors and more like liberators. The only thing they take from the Ironborn is their wealth and weapons, while allowing Mance to arm a few of his most trusted warriors with good steel. While they are still viewed with suspicion by the rest of the North, they are a bit more comfortable with them around. It will take time, but Jon is confident he can eventually win them all over. Unfortunately, so do the Boltons. While Roose and his men are still marching up the neck, Ramsay Snow sees the changing winds and realizes he must act fast while the North is still suspicious of them. Using what few incidences of violence and looting he can find, he uses this as an excuse to incite men against them. The old wounds are not so easily forgotten, and many men-at-arms, especially from the northmost houses, volunteer. He gathers up an army numbering perhaps 1,000 men and rides to the wall to shatter their host. On his way, he finds another unsuspecting ally, Bowen Marsh. The old steward was never fully satisfied with this arrangement, but his decision to send the Wildlings out was what truly pushed him over the edge. The Night's Watch is supposed to be neutral in the affairs of men, and while none of the Black Brothers took part in this conflict, it seems like Jon is getting more and more involved in the politics of the North. With that, Bowen worries that when Ramsay Bolton arrives, he will punish them for also allowing the Free Folk in. So instead, he sends Ramsay a letter, offering an alliance, and says that if he is to attack, Ramsay must send a sigil to Bowen Marsh, and some other like-minded Night's Watchmen can attack Mance from the rear and crush them. His only condition is, after that, Ramsay must not harm the Night's Watch. The battle begins at dawn. Ramsay's forces descend upon the villages and roundhouses at the gift, scattering the Wildlings and driving them back in disarray. Those unable to retreat are cut down, or worse. Soon enough, great plumes of smoke rise from burning homes, and the screams of the fleeing free folk echo through the cold air. Mance Rayder struggles to rally his people. He gathers his fighters in Molestown, but even with his leadership, the Wildlings are badly outmatched. Mance, recognizing the danger, sends Ygritte to Castle Black with urgent news for Jon Snow. As Ramsay's forces close in on the wall, he gives the signal, a gruesome display of burning Wildlings alive. The screams and fires can be seen atop Castle Black's tower, where Bowen Marsh is waiting. Inside Castle Black, Bowen Marsh makes his move. He's soon joined by Janos Slynt, Orthel Yurick, and nearly 30 dissatisfied brothers. One figure who is conspicuously absent is Sir Alistair Thorne, who did not indicate joining them. They storm the mess hall where Jon Snow is eating alongside a few of his men. In a matter of seconds, the men file in with swords. The other members of the Night's Watch are seized or ordered to stand aside. A few like Ren, Pip, and Sam try to fight back, but are quickly knocked into submission. A few others move to apprehend Dolan Noy and Maester Aemon as Bowen Marsh points his sword at Jon.
We want no trouble, Lord Commander. We won't hurt any of our brothers if we can avoid it. All we ask is that you remain here and do nothing while we do our duties. And what is that? To protect the realm and remain out of the conflicts of men. You tried to play politics by sending Mance and his wildlings south, and now it's going to bring the wrath of the North on us. But I managed to make a deal.
They won't trouble us so long as we help get rid of them wildlings. They're south of the wall, so they won't be raised as whites. All we want is the Lord Commander's head. A treasonous boy for a treasonous father. And you can call this staying out of politics, First Steward.
The side door opens, and Sir Alistair, alongside a squad of half a dozen of his supporters, comes in.
Sir Alistair, you of all people know how precarious our position is. It isn't politics, it's reaffirming our loyalty.
You can call a rotten pomegranate an apple if you want, First Steward, but it doesn't make it true. Mutiny is mutiny, and I'll have no part of it.
Then you better count your swords then, Sir Alistair.
Maybe you should.
The sound of fighting from outside pulls their attention as several more of Alistair's men guide a band of wildling warriors. At their head is a fiery-haired woman with a bow in her hand. She rushes inside the hall and looses an arrow that punches right through Janice Slint's leather armor. In seconds, everyone is on their feet with swords in hand. Ghost comes rushing in, scattering the mutineers and letting them be picked off one by one. The battle is short but brutal as Ygritte and her band of wildlings charge in, cutting down the mutineers and quelling the uprising in a swift, brutal confrontation. One of the last to fall is Bowen Marsh, who was cut down by Jon Snow himself. Ygritte quickly explains what is happening south and how even without Bowen Marsh, Ramsay is still pummeling the wildlings. Jon shouts for Man to prepare to ride out and aid Mance, but Sir Alistair blocks his path.
I stopped the mutiny because it was wrong, but we won't fight Bolton's war.
Mance sent me here to ask for help. You're one of us, Jon Snow.
Ah, yeah. The time has come to make your choice.
Ygritte, I'm sorry. You don't understand.
I do. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Ygritte leads her band of wildlings south, and by the time they arrive, the battle is already raging. Mance lines his army up in huge columns, but the center and left are being pushed back, with the only thing truly keeping them at bay being the discipline of the Thens, the strength of the giants, and the newly equipped wildlings with steel armor. Yet even this doesn't stop them from being pushed back step by step. Mance rides up and down the center with Tormund, trying to rally his men as they face charge after charge from the Northmen. Ygritte rushes to the right where the fighting still seems evenly paced, where 1-1 and the giants manage to hold their own. Yet just behind a squadron of Manderly knights prepares to charge. Ramsay orders them to finish off the wildlings, but in an unexpected turn, the 200 Manderly men do not charge. Instead, they hold their position, creating a gap in Ramsay's flank. Mance Rayder sees the opportunity and acts swiftly. With a rallying cry, he orders what few horsemen and chariots he has and rushes at it, hitting the center. Chaos erupts in Ramsay's ranks, as his forces scatter under the fierce onslaught. In the heart of the battle, Mance Rayder confronts Ramsay Bolton. Their clash is brutal and swift, but Ramsay is no warrior, and Mance easily cuts him down. The battlefield falls silent. The wildlings have won. Against all odds, they have not only survived, but secured their place in the north. By the end, the rest of the Northmen have scattered, save for the Manderly men who remain where they are. That is, until a figure rides forward.
Where is Jon Snow? My father would like to have words with him.
If you like the story, 2,000 likes will give us a part 2. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.